Good afternoon. This is the Binding Program with Andrea Lochin. Olena Kozlovets is our guest today. She's a co-owner of the quite famous Chulan, the closet. Chulan is a bookstore which grew out of Chulanchyk, the small closet. At that time, she had 3 children. I say had 3 children because now she has 5 kids. So she decided to set up a small bookstore, which was called Chulanchyk, within a children's club. The bookstore offered books that were interesting for kids, and particularly for her own kids. Over time, Chulanchyk became popular among the parents of the kids, and it grew into a store which now also sells books for adults. That's what we will discuss today. Lena, did this Chulanchyk turn into the famous Chulan? Is that right? Yes. Chulanchyk was a bookstore within a children's club, and now a lot of people are saying that Chulan is the same as Chulanchyk, which just grew up, but it hasn't become more serious. Did you maintain the atmosphere of the children's club in your bookstore for adults? The bookstore went through many changes during the 8 years of its existence. It was closed 4 times and then opened again. It really did change because the audience and range of books also changed.
Поменялась аудитория, поменялся где-то наше сердце.
But we succeeded in maintaining the atmosphere here.
Атмосферу мы постарались сохранить.
It's the same Chulanchyk which existed within the children's club.
В детском клубе.
Tell me, what's the main idea behind this bookstore? Because, as I understand it, the book business in our country is not a profitable one.
У нас в стране это не самое, в общем, прибыльное дело. Оно интересное.
Of course, the book business is very interesting. New meetings, impressions, but the book business only makes a small profit.
Понятие очень такое, своеобразное.
Do you regret getting involved in the book business? And what helps you keep your head above the water? You're right. It's a very elusive idea that you can make money in the book business. It's difficult not only in our country, but in the whole world. Everywhere. Yes, everywhere. It just so happened that we first established the children's club together with my sister. And after that we set up our own bookstore. Because at the time we had 5 children between us. So our interests were formed on the basis of our personal lives. The kids needed something to read, but there were very few good books around. So we decided, why not try to start a business together? Your children are now grown up, because that was 8 years ago. But you still have your own 5 children. Yes, I have 5 children of my own. So you are already an experienced mother. And what about your children? Do they still read books from Chulanchyk bookstore? To tell the truth, that is one of the reasons why the bookstore still exists. It's popular among our children, although each of them has his or her preferences in literature. What do the children of today read? You can answer this question as an expert because you have 5 kids, and they're all different from each other. I read your interviews about children and their education. As for me, you can publish the interview in a separate book, because it's very interesting to read about the views of modern mothers, whose children are absolutely different. What do modern children read? All of them have different preferences. For example, my 7-year-old likes works from classical literature, the Moomins, and books by Tolkien. Does he read modern books? Yes, he also can't read modern books, but works of classical literature excite him more. But my older son, who is already 20, did not like to read this type of literature. Classical literature was not interesting for him. He did not like fantastic fiction or fantasy. He preferred more real stories. So my main principle is to give a child the opportunity to choose for himself or herself. Very few people can allow a child to do this, but I think it's the right thing to do to allow a kid to flip through a book, open it in the middle and read. It must be interesting for the kid. What would you advise as to choosing a good book for a child? Let's say grandmother or mother with a child in a bookstore. I saw this picture quite often. It relates particularly to grandmothers because mothers are more modern. Grandmothers grew up at a time of Soviet rule, so they go right to the necessary bookshelf, in their view. and take the necessary book, for example, Timur and his club, and buy it for the children. You should read this, kid. I'm not sure that it's right, but perhaps the wisdom of the generations consists exactly of this. The world is changing, so the wisdom of our grandmothers is no longer current. What's your recipe for choosing the necessary book for a child? In actual fact, it is possible. One of the ways of picking a child's interest is to tell them exactly why you like this book. Sometimes it works, but only with younger kids. But older children have their own views and choice, so you have to give them the opportunity to choose. We see a lot of parents who visit our bookstore. It saddens me when I see that a kid wants to have a book, but a mother or grandmother does not buy it because they believe it's not worth reading or it's not interesting. Do you see such conflicts? You know, it's quite common to see a child asking a parent to buy him or her a toy or some other unnecessary thing, and the parent replying, "No, we won't buy it, we won't spend money on it." But how does a child choose a book? Do kids look at a beautiful book cover or interesting pictures? Of course, illustrations play a big role nowadays, and in general terms, the book world is changing very quickly. New illustrations and new trends in book publishing are appearing because of time and new trends. So the child pays particular attention to the illustrations and the cover. Perhaps kids pay attention to familiar plots. It may be a book that was read by one of their friends. So a child asks for a certain book to be bought or asks nothing. This is the most common case. Do you have a formula on how to convince a kid who came to a bookstore to go home with a book? Can you give advice, or say some magic words, or do certain things to make a child to read and develop his or her liking for reading? It seems to me that there are no kids who would not read books. If we offer as many books as possible to a child, he will finally choose the book he needs. The book became so expensive that every parent cannot afford to buy a book that costs 200 to 300 hryvnias. Of course, the words "a book is the best present" are now acquiring a peculiar meaning. And besides, many things can be downloaded. There are films that replace books. The world really is changing. And let's not forget about games, electronic books and so on. Therefore, it's more difficult, but you can get a child's interest. Another question, how do you do it? How do you grab the interest of parents as buyers? The best option is probably when a child makes a purchasing decision himself, though that is quite rare. You know, sometimes writers for children who suddenly wrote a novel about adults visit me. It is really interesting how this is so. A person wrote all his life for children, and suddenly he decided to make his adult audience happy with his work. The same thing happened with Olena. Children's books were sold at Chulanchyk, and suddenly she felt that it was not enough for her. It was difficult to raise parents, and so Chulanchyk became Chulan. In fact, when Chulanchyk appeared, we were the only independent bookstore in Kiev. Why did we call this store the way we did? Because we didn't depend on anyone's opinion or expert assessment. We chose the books ourselves, and we're known for making a choice in line with our own opinions. It was our point of view, how we saw things. Correct, according to our taste. Of course, it was subjective too. Thank God. Besides, such a store for adults did not exist, and we realized that if we don't open it, then someone else will. That's logical. That is how the idea of expanding, including an adult assortment and saturating our bookshelves with adult literature arose. If we're talking about subjective taste, you select books for Chulan. There's a huge amount, tens of thousands of different books are sold in Ukraine. Which is the most important, one or two, or several criteria, according to which you make your choice of books for your store. Suppose a certain book does not make the grade. It's not for us, it's not what we want, but we'll take this other one. Well, you somehow make a choice. You're not just selling bestsellers, which are everywhere anyway. You know, the situation with books for adults is more difficult. There's great demand for children's books in Ukraine.
Книг становится все больше, а вот
They're all interesting. I would like more adult books, higher quality literature, but such books are very few. Up until now, we got books from Russia.
времени мы привозили книги из России.
We also have books from France, for example, on our shelves. Business, the import of books from Russia has stopped completely. And that's why our book selection is small. That is why Chulan has also undergone change.
Скажем, невелик. И поэтому Чулан тоже претерпел
We
изменения.
have gone into partnership with some publishing houses. For example, with the Видавництво publishing house. They publish literature for teens and books for adults.
Сейчас тоже выпускают.
Слушайте,
Listen, but tell me honestly, do you get the situation that some publisher contacts you and asks you to sell a book, and you refuse the offer for whatever reason? Does that happen?
вы говорите, нет, вы знаете, уважаемый, но вот ваша книга, мы ее почему-то... Бывает такое?
We have such situations. Seriously? Yes, we have a lot of people who are fond of writing, and there is a phrase that does the rounds among authors. If you cannot write, then don't write. Well, you know, graphomania has always been one of mankind's diseases. Well, let's say not the most pleasant, but very common. And recently, there has been a lot of literature of varying quality. There are cases when they get in touch. What do you say in response? The reason? Or do you say we simply won't take it? Do you honestly tell the truth? We don't print all sorts of nonsense?
Или вы честно говорите, знаете, не печатайте всякую ерунду.
На самом
In fact, we first examined the book that he brought in, but we rarely take them. We often refuse. We've learned how to do this. It was difficult at first.
отказываем, научились это делать. Сперва это было сложно.
Надо быть
Мы
вам
говорим
We should call. It's interesting to hear.
о том, что
We say that this is our subjective opinion, and we don't want to see such a book on the shelves. Look, you're such a confident lady. What about your own projects organized by you, Chulan and others?
Проектов, которые организовывает непосредственно вот вы.
Tell us about them.
Рассказывайте.
да, долго
For a long time, we were advised to open our own publishing house. We have not got as far as opening a publishing house, but we have unveiled our own publishing project called Krukui, Walk On. The first product is a series of postcards called Krukui, Kiev.
открыток маршрутов по Киеву. Вот я принесла показать.
These are routes in Kiev, 12 in all. This is an unusual guide, not boring, which will interest both adults and children. It did not appear by chance, but appeared because we have our own children. Everything was tested on them, and it really was in demand and interesting.
Было востребовано и интересно.
Знаете, что еще? Вот когда люди узнают, что
You know, when people find out that this beautiful young woman has 5 children, they are shocked.
случается культурологический шок, это нельзя.
Olena Kozlovets is first and foremost a mother. Don't forget that the bookstore appeared because her children needed something to read.
Из того, что ее детям нужно было что-то читать.
So it is interesting to know how she organizes all of this. Owner of a famous bookshop and the mother of 5 children, all rolled into one.
Это в одном флаконе.
Знаете, да, это
You
двусторонний.
know, this is a two-way process, children and business. A year ago, or even 5 years, I was a completely different person. Of course, children also bring us up. How does this go with business? It's difficult to find time or even to plan something.
Как это сочетается с бизнесом? Это сложно сочетается, потому что сложно найти время, сложно спланировать. На самом деле,
In fact, I don't often plan for tomorrow because all sorts of things change.
потому что
All sorts of things happen in my life, sometimes very unexpectedly.
очень неожиданно.
Ну а как вот вы...
Well, how about, for example, that your eldest son started earning from the age of 15, and you encourage this in every way?
И что ваш старший ребенок, он начал зарабатывать сам лет с 15 отдельно, и вы в этом его всячески поощряли.
Our modern children, they're of different ages. They change over time. Is that down to character?
Со временем. Вот характер.
It's clear that all children are individuals, but in general terms, are children changing or not?
Или нет?
Да, мы действительно...
Of course, we give them a little pocket money. In fact, you don't give much when you have 5 of them. I understand you. In addition, it really helps the child to look for ways to earn money. It may not be at the age of 10 or not at 13, but now at 14 to 15 years of age, it is quite real.
в 10 лет, и не в 13. Но...
By the way, my eldest son already lives separately and is completely independent.
Мой старший сын, кстати, уже живет отдельно и абсолютно самостоятельно.
And he helps with the other children, does he? Or did he say, "That's it, Mom, bye"? Well, he loves them very much. They spend a lot of time together.
Это, скажем, такая непрямая помощь, но...
In some way, he's an example, as I understand it. Because he can really take the kids and go somewhere. We spend a lot of time together and even plan to spend our holidays together anyway.
Даже отпуск планируем вместе все равно провести. Поэтому он...
So he's still part of our family. Well, first of all, I want to thank you for the visit and wish that Chulanchyk or Chulan develops further as a business. Maybe it will be closed for the 5th or 6th time, but please open it again, develop, and definitely come and see us again sometime.
Развивайтесь и обязательно как-нибудь приходите к нам.
Thank you.